Hello, everybody. My name is Adam Thorne, and welcome to the Australian Aviation Podcast. Now, let's get straight into it, and I will introduce my two co-hosts. First up, Chris Fenton. Chris, how are you?
Very well, thanks, Adam. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Good
and Jake Nelson, how are you?
I'm not bad. The bromance is over, Adam. We're back on the opposite side of the table.
We take it very seriously. All of the video stuff, it's very much gone to our heads.
Absolutely.
I'm wearing the shirt purely to hide the pounds.
Adam, I'm sorry. We discussed this last week.
Right,
we were
Jake.
all going to be wearing black, and here you are in tan and white.
It's just very on trend at the minute.
Leader of the pack.
Because the way I've got to think about it now is, could I get extra kind of sponsorship deals and things on the side? I've got to look the part. You know, this is the start of something.
YD, Tarakash, Adam's open to a wardrobe.
Anything really, and I'm very easily bought as well. So whatever, if you just, I'll hook you up with my agent. It'll be great.
We were supposed to be the fellas in black, Adam. I'm disappointed in you.
Yes. Well, I will try next week. I do have that same polo shirt, so I will.
It's a very fashionable polo shirt.
It is very fashionable. Anyway, let's crack on. Before we crack on, if you happen to be visiting, as you should be, the Australian Aviation website, you will notice it's had something of a refresh, not a major overhaul, just a little bit of a tinkering to make it more user-friendly. That was led by our technology team. In particular, I'd like to give a shout-out to Tim Johnson, who oversees the team, and Nathan and Lucky, who are the two engineers who made it all happen. So thank you very much.
Bit of a nip tuck?
Yeah, bit of a nip tuck. Sometimes it's good just to have a little bit of Botox.
Absolutely.
Just a little bit of a jab here and there. Exactly.
It looks really good.
But thank you very much for all your hard work on that. Next thing I was going to say, which is very important, we can do this in the world of video, is in many ways we are our own airline. We have a fleet here of aircraft, which we've spoken about before. Chris has a personal collection of 400. If you do have any model aircraft, send them to us. However, despite the fact that you really should be drowning in people sending you the very finest models,
I should be.
We've got a new addition to the fleet. Talk us through it, Chris.
Yeah, we do. So I'll hold it up. Hopefully the camera there can see it, but it's the Rex 737.
Close one, Chris.
Yeah, I know, very close one there. It's the sexy Rexy, as I like to call it. So it arrived care of a purchase from an online model shop late last week. So featured this week.
So obviously you package them up and bring them along here to the studio, but when you are at home, and you should just constantly be at work, obviously, when you are at home, where do the models live?
So sit on shelves at home.
Yeah.
I had some shelves that I bought specifically to display them. I do have to admit, not all of them are on display. Obviously 400 plus models. I could have an entire room at home dedicated to the model collection.
And should.
And should. But yeah, look, I've probably got the ones I favour the most or love the most on display at home.
I'm a little bit concerned. It's just occurred to me now. You have two dogs.
I do have two dogs.
Firstly, just talk to us about the dogs, because the only thing I like more than planes is dogs. But secondly, is there any worry about the dogs getting hold of the models, getting them in the mouth?
No, from a very young age, the pups learnt not to go near Dad's model aeroplane collection. They were not chew toys. And the models are kind of displayed from a height that they can't easily access. But my two cheeky dogs at home, my fur babies, don't go near the models. They're not chew toys.
And can you do a shout out to them, because they will be listening to this? Because you'll obviously be playing.
They
this
will
in
listen, and they watch.
Yeah.
I watch it back at home to make sure that I didn't say anything I shouldn't have said. So shout out to my beautiful boy Remy, and my beautiful girl Winter, Chocolate Labs, my cheeky two.
Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have any models that you want to send to Chris, or maybe a real plane and some kind of shrink ray, he will accept either.
Absolutely.
Okay, welcome back. So before we talk about the news, much more important than any of that was the announcement of the successful nominees for the Australian Aviation Awards. They say it's the Oscars of aviation. I personally, this is better than the Oscars in many ways,
Much
because
better.
who cares about watching movies nowadays? Chris, tell us a little bit about the announcement and what comes next.
Yeah, so all of the finalists have been announced. A massive congratulations to all of our finalists. So basically what happens next, pretty much between now and the awards night, which is occurring in Sydney on the 31st of August, our finalists will go to a judging panel. So we've got an esteemed panel of judges that will judge our finalists across many different categories. And excitingly, we exceeded our nominations this year versus last year. So fantastic effort to our community out there and our listeners out there for getting involved and nominating and shortlisting people. And then we will all come together at the Star on the 31st of August to celebrate the Night of Nights and crown some winners. I'm excited.
It was going to be really good. It's going to be really good.
It'll be great.
We are also, I don't want to give anything away, but we're trying to do as many kind of themed things as possible here. So with last year we had people serving cocktails, kind of dressed in full kind of aviation regalia, serving from the trolleys. We're trying to get a similar thing happening. We're all going to have we'll talk about this a little bit further down the road. We're going to have a special trophy designed, made of aircraft parts, which is very, very exciting. So we're going to try and make it a very interesting thing. Obviously, the people that are nominated, we like to see them there.
Absolutely,
but
we do.
Even if you aren't nominated and you want to come along, enjoy yourself, make some contacts, by all means, you're absolutely welcome. And if you visit the revamped Australian Aviation site, you can find all the details you need and all the tickets and everything there.
Yep, tickets are on sale now. It's shaping up to be a brilliant night. Jake, Adam, and myself will all be there.
But don't let that dissuade you.
No, they
that's
should
the
be
opposite
wanting
now,
to come and meet us. Like, we're happy to hand out autographs for a small fee. We're
Yes,
happy to
of
take
course.
photos as well.
Have we decided on a name for the individual trophies? Yeah, like the Oscars. Because I don't think we've had any suggestions from our listeners yet.
We can't call them the Plainies because
that would be
no.
That would be. If we want to be eco-friendly, Chris, I'm sure you've got some spare models lying around that we can spray paint gold or something.
You wouldn't mess
No,
with those. No.
Computer says no.
Maybe
No.
from airlines you don't like.
Maybe, but I'm not sure I've got enough for all of our categories because we've got a lot
You've
of
got
categories
400
this year.
to be fair.
Yeah.
So I mean,
but not
I'm
enough
calling
that I
them,
don't
yeah.
like. Not enough that I don't like. But I don't know the Avies, I don't know.
Well, if you do have any suggestions,
Yeah, if you've got a cool name on
The
what we should call it.
Earharts, no. No, that probably
media
wouldn't
I see
at
work.
what you did then, I like that.
australianaviation.com.au is where you need to send your suggestions to.
Or reach out to us on socials.
Or reach us on socials. Anyway, let's crack on to the news now. So one of the things we spoke about last week was the potentially or the problems at Airservices, whether they are or are not understaffed. So I'll just do a little bit of background for those of you new to this saga. So there's been a lot of incidents in the last year where essentially large swathes of Australia, the air traffic control effectively shuts down. And what this means is that rather than having a person in the air traffic control tower communicating with the aircraft have to communicate with each other in order to self-separate. And obviously, even though you can run the skies like that, it does tend to cause a lot of delays and cancellations and obviously isn't ideal. Now, Airservices say that these shutdowns are caused by, I think they use the word short-term and temporary shortage of staff. So essentially they're saying this is when people call in ill. These are like unplanned things that just happen. And there's not in any way an underlying problem at all. They do have enough controllers. But obviously a lot of people in the industry are saying, well, that's obviously silly because if you had more than you thought you need, then you'd have enough to cover. So there's a bit of a hoo-ha and a bit of a back and forth. Jake has got some fantastic exclusives this week on this. So tell us, Jake, the latest on this and the kind of reaction to it.
This came to us from the Australian Federation of Air Pilots. I spoke to Captain Louise Pohl, who's the president of the Federation last week, and Marcus Diamond, the safety and technical manager there. They've done a survey which has gone out to their members. They found that almost 31% of pilots have experienced delays multiple times per month. 72% reported an efficiency of flight issue due to contingency measures like TIBA, which is traffic information broadcast by aircraft. That's aircraft talking to each other. And most pilots see these as unsafe and inefficient. 15% have reported traffic proximity or separation issues within the last 6 months. The Federation is the largest pilots union in Australia, and it's basically said that they've seen chronic systemic staffing problems at Airservices dating back to before the pandemic. Captain Pole said, quote, "We've had extensive responses from all our members around Australia that they are experiencing unforecast holding due to a lack of available air traffic control staffing numbers. They're experiencing TIBA airspace at short notice, and that's possibly meaning flights can't depart. And if they can depart, they've got quite large diversion routes required to go around that TIBA airspace. The vast majority of pilots have now experienced TIBA, where up until about 9 months ago, most pilots didn't even remember what the acronym meant because it was so infrequently used." And she said that she's experienced that. She is an active pilot with QantasLink. She said that she's experienced that herself many times recently, where they don't have enough staff in certain sectors on certain days. And they don't tell you in a lot of situations, she says, that this is happening. So you're already airborne, and then they increase holding requirements. Now, planes will tend to carry extra fuel for contingencies, but if there's if the plane's especially full, if there's a lot of people and bags on board or freight, Captain Pole says that they might not be able to carry much extra fuel above what is required. And if there's suddenly holding requirements put on these aircraft, the pilots haven't planned for this much fuel, and so they have to be able to divert to be able to refuel because they cannot continue the flight under safe fuel requirements.
So one of the kind of aspects of this, and some of the accusations are made, essentially is that too many people were offered or took early retirement or redundancy during COVID. And now they've got an issue that a lot of people in aviation does. There is apparently, at least, or allegedly, there is a staff shortage, and it is very, very hard to find people and bring them in. And of course, this is a very, very, very specialised skill. So they are particularly have it difficult. Chris, what's bringing you here? What's your view on this whole saga now? Because it's been going on a long time.
Look, it has been going on a long time, and absolute hats off to Louise and her association for doing the interview with you, Jake, and being so open and frank. It's quite scary to think that in a modern age we've got planes using T-bar to land and take off and navigate their way around Australia. I know that with one of the stories we recently posted on socials about Sydney being down to one runway again due to winds, a pilot commented on that, saying they took off without air traffic to the Gold Coast, I guess effectively using T-bar. So I think Airservices Australia probably went too hard with its retirement plan, not realising the dire situation that they would leave us in. And I get that being an air traffic controller is a highly skilled job that requires in-depth training and knowledge, and it's not something that, start work today and tomorrow you're clearing planes to take off. The education process involved is quite lengthy, but I would like to think that Airservices Australia are looking at how they can reduce the training period. I believe it's a 12-month plus course before they're even allowed close to an air traffic control tower. I'd have to do some more research into this, but what can Airservices Australia be doing now to reduce the training period, number one, to get people upskilled quicker and back out there? What are they doing? Are they reaching out to former employees saying, do you want to come back even if it's on a part-time basis? Airservices Australia need to do more work here, because we don't need unsafe skies in Australia. Australia has a long and safe aviation history, and we need to maintain that.
I would just say there that the Airservices are very insistent that this kind of workaround is, they say, internationally recognised and safe, which I'm sure that may be the case, but clearly it's going to be more difficult than something they have to deal with normally. And I think one of the points there that was made by the pilots union was that if they find this out at short notice, it's another thing to worry about. It's another kind of load on their plate.
Exactly. Also, in fairness to Airservices, we have to say Airservices does say that it is enhancing its service resilience by recruiting more than 50 trainees nationwide in the next 3 months. 80 air traffic controllers are due in the 2024 financial year. Airservices says that it needs around 8 800 air traffic controllers to run its network, and it has 900. So according to Airservices, it does have more than enough. Something that Marcus Diamond, however, did tell us, and it goes to a point that you've made, Chris, is that this is a safety issue. Because it is constraining, says Marcus, this decision-making that's happening in the air, that it's making things less safe. Most of these pilots, he says, are limited. They're being rostered to limits within the fatigue rules, which have expanded now with FRMS, the Fatigue Risk Management Systems. And he says, if you think about it, TIBA and the undeclared holding delays, this all adds on to the last leg of the day for their fatigue extensions, and they're now in a position where they're tired at the end of a very long day, and they have a limited decision-making capability because their airspace is being shut and they don't have enough fuel, or they've got less fuel.
One of the interesting things that I've learned covering the aviation beat for a few years is that and I don't want to use the clever word, but everything is a very symbiotic relationship. Everything affects everything else.
Absolutely.
So if you have a delay or a cancellation at an airport, it's not necessarily the case that one particular thing led to it. It's a whole different thing. And again, it's like it's another problem. It's another thing thrown in the mix. It's something else to worry about. Like Chris says, I think just in general, Australia has a phenomenal aviation record, particularly in the kind of jet age.
Yes.
But I also do think that generally it does feel that there's an element of complacency, I think, slips in sometimes, because for me there can be an attitude of, well, there'll never be a major crash or a major incident in Australia, but that isn't necessarily the case. And I think that, I completely see why everybody's up in arms about this.
Yeah, look, I remember back to when I was crew, Adam, and one of the things that cabin crew are trained on heavily is CRM, crew resource management, and it's in essence ensuring everyone on the crew, from the pilot in charge to the first officer, engineer if there's an engineer on board, and the cabin crew are all aligned and working as one team, and no one is better than anyone else. And in essence, you never want a perfect Swiss cheese in that all of the holes of the cheese line up in a particular order to make a straight line. You want those holes scattered everywhere so that to avoid an incident or a mistake happening or an occurrence happening, you want the holes not to align so that there's a break in the chain and someone will pick that up and go, whoa, something's not right here. Let's take a step back and reassess the situation. So it's, I guess, part of the complacency that you mention is, are our holes starting to line up to lead to an incident? And that's me not going on record saying that Australian skies are unsafe. I still believe that our airlines, our crews, our professionals on the ground and in the air are just that, extremely highly trained, talented professionals with safety first attitude. But something's going wrong somewhere, and it needs to be fixed.
So that kind of Swiss cheese model is the idea that you have backup after backup after backup after backup, and you plan for multiple things to go wrong. But the issue is that as we enter this post-COVID world, the industry has become smaller in terms of numbers, efficiencies, inverted commas, have been made, and by doing that, you bit by bit chip away at those backups and make things a little bit more unsafe.
Absolutely. In my opinion. Sorry, Jake.
No worries. One thing that Captain Pole said is she is calling for, she says that Airservices should acknowledge that staffing is not at required levels. She wants an independent review of staffing requirements, and she says that she wants robust procedures to manage the airspace with current staffing levels while they build up required numbers. She says that she also wants to be seeing pilots notified appropriately ahead of flights that they need to plan for extra holding or extra flight time if there are going to be these delays, which is currently not consistently happening.
What I would say as well about that interview, which was excellent, is that often if you have a union, say, having a go at an airline, it's because, perhaps understandably or not, their members want more money or they want more perks. But this is an intervention that's been made purely for safety reasons. There's nothing they're getting out of that financially. They're just saying, we are very worried, right? Yeah, and Civil Air, the ATC's union, has also come out and said that Airservices is understaffed. And this is nothing against Civil Air. It would be easier to ignore Civil Air because Civil Air is the union for air traffic controllers, and obviously the air traffic controllers are employed by Airservices. But
as you say, Adam, this is the pilots. This is a union that is not affiliated with Airservices. It does not have air traffic controllers as members. This is the largest pilots union in Australia saying something is wrong. And there's no, as you said, financial incentive that could be construed.
If you are an air traffic controller or if you are a pilot and you've had first-hand experience of this in Australia, or if you just, want to give your opinion, you can email us at media@australianaviation.com.au, or, of course, you can comment on our socials or comment on the page. We always try to make sure we give these things a read, and we will get back to you. Okay, welcome back. So, obviously, we like to cover the news as seriously and as impartially as possible. However, sometimes we just love a good headline, and we have been talking past few weeks about Brexit and its exit from Whyalla. And Jake has coined this is now Jake's thing, but we are claiming this as Australian Aviation. We're now calling this exit of Rex from Whyalla Rexit. It's brilliant, isn't it?
It is.
Just forget the story. Let's just talk about the creative process that came to Brexit.
Well, okay. I'm sure you're intimately acquainted with Brexit, Adam. I'm sure you're intimately acquainted with Brexit. Yeah. So what I did was I took the B off.
It's genius.
It is. Yeah.
It's genius. No,
That's simple.
It really was. But with this whole, I believe that there is also like a Rexit movement, which is like suggesting that parts of northern Victoria and southern New South Wales break away to form their own state or something.
But you made
didn't
this.
WA claim that already?
Wasn't that Waxit or something?
Oh yeah, something like
Rexit was much more pure. I mean, that works beautifully. It really does. Anyway, we should probably talk about the story itself. So essentially, the start of this is that Rex have exited serving Whyalla because Whyalla are passing on the screening costs to the airline. And this has rumbled on. There's been a lot of bad blood. I don't know if that's a Taylor Swift song.
We're covering that later.
We're covering that later.
Well
just too many puns, isn't it? Just spitting them out. So there's been a bit of back and forth. They're both at each other's throats. They're both very unhappy. Jake, tell us what the latest is.
Yeah, so the latest is that Whyalla Council last week came out and said that it could not modify its terminal to account for screened and unscreened passengers as Armidale Council in New South Wales had done, because Armidale Regional Airport has 3 gates, whereas Whyalla has only 1 gate. Now, Rex came back this last week as well. We may have talked about it on the podcast where, the mayor of Whyalla was saying that Rex has been defaming his council, saying that they have been pandering to Qantas, that they have been deceitful and deceptive, etc., etc. Rex has come back. Rex is saying that the council's assertion that it could not have modified its terminal was, and this is a direct quote, calculated to hide its secret agenda, presumably of pandering to Qantas. They didn't say what the secret agenda was. But National Airports Manager David Brooksby for Rex says that Rex, more than any other party in Australia, has the most experience in screened and unscreened departures from regional airports. We are intimately familiar with the modifications needed. We have given a suggestion to Council of a workable solution that would involve works of less than $10,000. This would alleviate the need for Rex passengers to subsidise Qantas operations to the tune of $500,000 annually. Furthermore, when the current Whyalla Airport terminal was at the design stage, Rex requested that Council have 2 departure gates, and this request was ignored. Now, we contacted Whyalla Council about this because they have been sort of providing back and forth statements for a while, and I think that Whyalla Council may finally have gotten sick of the back and forth, because Whyalla City Council spokesperson said that Rex's ongoing emotive allegations do not warrant further public response.
What I would say is,
words. Ding, ding.
How hath no fury like a Rex airline scorn? If I was going to get into a spat with anybody, I would not pick these guys, because these guys, they know how to fight. They're the plucky underdog. They know what they're doing here.
Sorry to jump in here, but wouldn't the most common sense approach be simply not to open the security screening area for the Rex timed flights?
I don't know how to. I don't know how to run an airport, Chris.
That would be the most common sense approach. Simply do not pay security staff to be on hand for the time arrival of a Rex flight and don't screen their passengers. Keep Rex in Whyalla.
And we will, on that note, actually, no, we're going to move on to another Rex story, and I'd say this is hot off the press. That's the opposite pun we're looking for.
It's cold off the press. It's freezing off the press.
It's really worrying
Unlike
how
this
I've got
office.
older. It's just terrible dad jokes and awful puns. That's all
I'm
what
a
happens.
bad influence on you, Adam.
Yes, no, and he's even worse around the office. If anything, he's toning it down on this podcast. It's just relentless. So the next story we're going to talk about, Rex looks to set course to Antarctica. That's certainly a long way from the regions. What's going on here?
Well, now, Adam, you could argue that Antarctica is the ultimate regional destination.
Of course,
It's hard as in Rex's hard as in the country, and that country includes
Antarctica.
Yeah, so Rex wants to become the next aerial operator for the Australian Antarctic Division. Currently, that contract is held by Sky Traders. They use Airbus A319s for intracontinental services, so they fly between Hobart and Wilkins Aerodrome, which is 70 kilometres from Casey Station in Antarctica. They've done that since 2002. Now, it is expected that there will be a tendering process opening up again in November, and Rex said that it wants to become the new operator for Antarctica. So the division is looking to bring together its specialized aerial operations under one operator. It wants a large intercontinental aircraft, there we go, 4 intracontinental turboprops with skis. It wants 4 twin-engine helicopters that can go between land and ship. It wants a significant scaling up of uncrewed aerial system capability. Rex is saying they've appointed an Antarctic project manager, Craig Martin. He says that the program requires an operator with a deep knowledge of aviation across a whole range of platforms, as well as proven organizational excellence in operating special missions. He says, quote, "We believe there is no better Australian candidate than the Rex Group with its expertise in operating a fleet." They really missed the opportunity to say Rexpertise. "In operating a fleet of 150 aircraft in every state, ranging from Boeing 737-800NG, Embraer E190 airliners, de Havilland Dash 8-400 turboprops, over 55 Saab 340 turboprops, one of the largest fleet of Beechcraft King Air aircraft in Australia, and the recently introduced Pilatus PC-24 jets." He says, "We also have deep knowledge of special mission work, having carried out tactical flying for the Department of Defence for 20 years, as well as specialised aeromedical services for over 12 years as the selected air ambulance operator for both the state governments of New South Wales and Victoria, with another 10 years running on both contracts." They've even assembled this panel to guide their bid ahead of the tendering process. So Rex is very serious about this.
So if they do win this, Chris, obviously, he's in charge of this at Rex. Obviously, we need a press trip on this. We need to go and see this first. Craig,
you're not going to get a trip if you call him Chris.
That's really bad. Yes.
It's cold off the press.
It's cold
Forgiven.
off the press.
Forgiven.
Yes. So apologies for that, Craig. But anyway, if you can overlook that slip, we're going to need a press trip to go out and there and see this firsthand. Which one of us three is going then?
Ready?
I mean,
scissors, paper, rock.
Yeah, no, I don't. I would like to go, and also being from the UK, where it's actually cold, though not that cold, I think I would be better at dealing with it. I'm not sure you two are going to be able to. You're going to be in a use, are you?
Probably not. But do you think these flights would require screening? Because they could fly from Whyalla to Antarctica.
Well, dear, let's not. No. Let's not stir the pot anymore.
What I will say to Rex is, as you know, here at Australian Aviation, we do love the underdogs, and Rex has just, I guess, since they've introduced the jet into their fleet, they've consistently been seen as the underdogs, and they've come out swinging. So, you know, hats off to Rex, and good luck with the bid. I think it's exciting news for the team at Rex.
That having been said, you'd have to think that Sky Traders would be the smaller operator here, because they've only got a couple of A319s and a few other smaller planes. So they might be coming into this with it. It might be that Sky Traders is the underdog.
Could be. Very true. Competition never hurts, and good luck.
Good luck to all. Good luck to all
all
involved.
parties involved.
Now, time has almost beaten us on the show. However, talking of incredible puns, we're going to discuss one more story. A headline is Bear Traffic Control. I'm going to read that out again. Bear Traffic Control. Virgin reunites best friends after search. This sounds like the kind of hard-hitting investigative journalism we are known for. Jake, talk us through this.
Oh yeah, look, this was a really tough investigation. I had to meet several people in car parks.
Yes.
Under the cloak of darkness.
Under the cloak of darkness. My contact was known only to me as Deep Jet. So this was a very tough investigation. But we have pulled it out. We have learned this story of how Virgin Australia has reunited a little boy named Harry with his teddy bear in Perth.
What happened? Well, so he left his teddy bear on the plane.
He left his teddy bear on the plane.
Rookie error.
Absolutely.
Don't leave your bear on the plane.
Yeah.
Harry won't make that mistake again.
He will. Well, he's very small, so he might. But he left his teddy bear on the plane, and so Virgin flight crew. Cabin crew found the teddy bear, and they put out a call on Facebook saying, if you, well, I'll quote, they said, we're sure there's a very upset little one at home missing their furry friend. If you've flown into Perth recently and seem to have lost one of your pack while travelling, this cuddly bear has been on quite the adventure and is ready for a snuggle with its best friend. Now, I should say that flown and bear were in fact an airplane emoji and a bear emoji, but I think you get the drift. Anyway, this search on Facebook, it attracted more than 1,000 comments and more than 1,600 shares, and it took less than a day for the owner to come forward. And so young Harry on Monday afternoon was reunited with his teddy bear. After the teddy bear did have a chance to get a bit of a tour of the plane, the teddy bear was posed in a Virgin scarf, in front of the seats. It was allowed to sit in a jump seat. It was put on the controls, which you'd have to think would be a safety hazard if it was in the air. Bears are notoriously bad at flying planes. It was also, posed looking out the window and all that. But it's a very sweet story, I think.
Customer service at its best.
I was going to ask you about that. Now, it was a genuinely very kind and sweet gesture. I know I'd have had it on eBay straight away. Every cent counts. But you, for those who may be unfamiliar, Chris has done every single job in aviation, bar fly the plane. But Chris rose to be cabin crew manager and worked that job for many, many years. You must have found things that were left behind in the plane. You must have some stories of the like to tell.
I've seen many things left behind on an aeroplane
that would be appropriate for this podcast and the family audience.
Yeah, family audience. Look, I've found many a thing left on a plane, and where possible, we try and find it as quick as possible, run into the terminal to see if we can find the passenger. If not, we give the most detailed description to the ground staff of what the passenger looked like, what they were wearing, anything we can remember, seat number, where it was found, anything like that. And to the full credit of the ground team, they do always try and reunite a person with lost object. But some random things I've had left behind, a wedding dress.
How'd you forget that?
I have no idea, but...
Even harder if you were wearing it at the time.
That marriage wasn't going to last, is it?
No,
It
was off to a turbulent start. But yeah, we had a wedding dress left behind in an overhead locker. We've had wallets, mobile phones, iPads, laptops. There's a whole plethora.
Small children?
Yeah. Potentially. Big children, most definitely.
Any cursed objects?
I did have one scary object once where we were like, oh, should we touch this? Should we move it? Or should we call the police? We were really in doubt.
You've got to tell us what it was now,
no,
Chris.
I can't, unfortunately, because it turned out to be something a bit more serious. But it left us scratching our heads going, oh, what do we do here? Is this lost or is this something more sinister?
Anything like a haunted doll?
We did have this creepy looking voodoo-y looking thing once. The family that were reunited with it claimed it was a Day of the Dead doll.
And after you handed it back to them, did you then return to the plane and find it sitting in the seat?
No, nothing like that. Nothing like that.
Well, I would say very well done.
Very well done.
Very well done to
There we
the
go.
cabin crew. A lovely gesture.
Yeah.
We love those kind of
Hats
stories.
off to Virgin. That's like
Yeah.
that's a good news, good PR story, and credit to them for going that extra mile. But also actually having fun with it as well. So
And we've got a picture here of Harry reunited with his bear. He doesn't. No, I'm going to say. I was going to say he doesn't look
he
that
didn't
happy.
look that thrilled in
To
the
be
picture,
honest,
did he?
like,
He was
a lot
more
of
like,
people gone to a lot of trouble to get that bear back.
What are they making me do?
They did way more than the bare minimum on this.
Oh god! Right, we're going to end
Hey,
it now.
I learned a fun fact today.
Oh, go on.
No,
yes, of course.
We have to start sharing fun facts. So I learned a fun fact today. Let me just bring it up here so I can read it word for word. So, did you know that airport control windows must be angled at precisely 15 degrees from vertical at the top to decrease reflections from both inside and outside the tower?
And that's a very good fact. The problem we've got now is every week you're going to have to come up with an interesting aviation
Not just me.
fact.
We're a team here.
Well, did you know, Chris, that there are, in fact, more planes in the ocean than there are submarines in the sky?
Right, we are going to end it now.
We can't end it, Adam, without talking about Qantas's latest move to take it to Air New Zealand.
Oh, yes. We've had, I say the standard of journalism, it is just silliness now, is what we do on this website. So we've had teddy bears.
What do you mean now, Adam?
Yeah, what I'm on about. It's always been like this. So we've had teddy bears, we've had Brexit. We've got this. It is a silly story, but a serious story. As we spoke about last week, Taylor Swift has snubbed New Zealand. She's not playing her concerts in New Zealand. She's doing them, I think, 7 concerts in Melbourne, across Melbourne and Sydney. So last week, Air New Zealand put on flights so the Kiwis could come and see her. This week, not to be outdone, Qantas has got involved. Jake, tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so Qantas is adding 16 flights between Australia's 2 biggest cities and Christchurch and Wellington, alongside another 50 interstate flights. This was due to recording a 1,500% increase in domestic bookings when the pre-sale and general sale tickets went on sale compared to the same period last year. So this is, of course, after Air New Zealand's pledge to add 2,000 Trans-Tasman seats to allow Kiwis to cross the ditch. So it's just Taylor-mania at the moment. You haven't seen this sort of thing since the Beatles, have you?
What's extraordinary about this is the kind of a ripple effect, the positive ripple effect for the economy of Taylor Swift visiting. So what with the economy going over dogs globally, we just need Taylor Swift to put on more concerts, and then surely that solves everyone's problems.
True.
We are solving the problems of the world here on the Australian Aviation Podcast.
We are. Now let's finally end this with just so there's some smidgen of credibility left. So I will say, Chris, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Jake, thank you very much for joining us.
Had a very good time, Adam.
I'm not going to say it. And we will be back on this show the same time next week. But from us, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.